Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. And tonight, we'll be looking at a very interesting but timely topic, managing a difficult boss and work terrain. Facilitating this session for us, with us tonight, is Damilola Ilori. She's an HR management consultant with over 8 years quality experience that spans across retail, healthcare, non-profit, consulting, and so on and so forth. She has her first degree from the Waterfront Lagoon Front University of Lagos. She's an associate of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. She is also certified with HRCI. She's a senior professional human resource international. She is also licensed by the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management. She has an MPIA, Masters in Public and International. Is that MPIA? Public,
yes, please.
International, and what? Please.
Masters
what does the A stand for? Administration?
No, International Affairs.
Okay, fantastic. Affairs. You will obviously know by now that she's in love with Lagos. She volunteers and she enjoys creating joy by feeding people, and she volunteers with organizations like the Elim House Missions and Engrace Lifetime Foundation. She's volunteering again tonight. My privilege and pleasure with all the loved ones. Let's use all the virtual emoticons, emojis to receive tonight to this prestigious platform, our facilitator for tonight, Damilola. You have the floor, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Adeosun. So thank you to everybody for joining in. And contrary to what our facilitator has said, my co-facilitator on this session, yes, I do not currently reside in Lagos. So my love for Lagos is kind of like on pause for now. So thank you for joining in once again. There would be no need for us to go through this. Let's just go straight to the topic of conversation for tonight. A couple of us may have an idea as to what it means, working in a difficult terrain and, working with a difficult boss. And why the two would seem as if they overlap is because your your boss most likely determines 75% of your employee experience, if not more than that. So it's very critical that we understand how to manage the work terrain and just how to navigate through working with somebody that may not have the same kind of management style that you have, working with somebody who's sometimes maybe values, do not align with your own values. And so I would also like to disabuse anybody that has the notion of this conversation is going to be around, 10 things that you can do so that, your boss would not be difficult again. Managing a difficult boss, we would need to put it into perspective because there's a saying in my part of the country here in Nigeria, and I'm just going to paraphrase that says that when somebody already becomes a dry bone, it's very difficult to bend the person, most especially when it comes to values and principles. So the crux of this conversation is for us to understand how to manage, and the underlining word there is management. So for you, how do you manage? Yes, I would wish we could have this conversation also with bosses, because you shouldn't put the responsibility of your subordinate having to manage you. That should not be part of my responsibility. My manager should be able to manage me, even though management is both ways. You must learn how to manage up, and then whoever you're managing also needs to learn how to manage down. And so the conversation is going to be much more focused on how to ensure that you are in that position where you are managing your difficult boss and the work terrain, and you're navigating through properly. So I would just like to say that many of the slides presented are from various sources and a multitude of internet sites. That's just a disclaimer. So let's just go over what we're going to be talking about. Common types of difficult bosses. I'm sure that for some of us, if the floor is to be opened, You know, we would have very peculiar examples to give in, you know, very peculiar situations that we've been in, and how we kind of like learned how to navigate all of that. But then, why it's essential to manage your difficult boss, strategies for managing your difficult boss, and the impact on you as an employee, would look at, of course, we're going to be taking a couple of questions just so that we can all learn together in the course of this conversation. Now, it's been mentioned that, you know, I'm a mid-level HR professional, so I still have a lot to learn as well. You know, for some people who are, you know, joining us in this session, for some of you, you are, you know, 2 years into the work space. You are maybe 5 years, and some of you may have been lucky. Maybe you've never had a difficult boss. You know, some of you may still encounter a difficult boss, so this conversation is not out of place, so that we will, you know, just gain the necessary tools and emotional intelligence that help us to be able to do this. So now, here is a question for everyone to think about. Now, we've mentioned repeatedly that the conversation is around managing a difficult boss. However, we need to contextualize the topic of the conversation. Do you have a difficult or a toxic work environment? And don't forget that we had mentioned how your boss, you know, contributes more than 75% to your employee experience. We've all had cases of organizations where people would say, this particular department is not so nice in terms of experience. But even in the department, maybe the department has various units. Somebody in a particular unit will tell you, "Oh, that is not my experience." So it shows you that the employee experience is very different for each individual, depending on the kind of department you work in, you know, the kind of boss that you work in, and then that ability to be able to identify with what the organization is doing per time. So, do you have a difficult or a toxic work environment? I think this is very important for us to talk about. Now, I'm sure that for some of us, we've seen, you know, for those who went to boarding house, for instance, let me use that example. I went to boarding school for secondary school, and there are times when you will just get back to school, and for whatever reason, you won't see maybe a particular person back to school. And when you find out, you would most likely hear, "Oh, this person did not come back because of one senior." I don't know if how many people had that experience, you know, and you cannot identify because that is not your experience. So there is a difference between somebody that is a boss who is difficult, or a work environment that is difficult, and a boss who is toxic and a work environment that is toxic. I think it's very important that we must make that clear distinction, so that we do not have the idea that this conversation is around you managing a toxic environment. No, it's around somebody who can manage someone who is difficult for whatever reason. Now we're going to be talking about, you know, the different types of bosses as we go on. So I just try to expatiate on what the two mean here. So difficult implies hard to manage, hard to satisfy, or hard to comprehend. For whatever reason, maybe you just that your boss, you just cannot understand the person. So your boss asks for a report today on something, and then tomorrow the person is asking you to follow up with an email, and then some other time is another request that is not in line with the usual. So how do you understand that kind of person? Is your boss somebody who is difficult to satisfy, or somebody who is hard to manage? You know, so these questions are questions that we would need to settle in our minds. However, toxic implies somebody who is harmful to your mental health, harmful to your growth as, you know, a young professional, as a professional, somebody who is extremely harsh and malicious, somebody who can tell you, "Oh, for instance, I've heard people, that has never been my experience. I've heard people say things like, you know, their boss would just say things like, 'Oh, you must be a very stupid boy.'" And I'm like, why would a boss say that to a subordinate? You know, someone who is malicious, that would Be deliberate about, doing things that would step you down in an organization, or doing things that would stunt your growth. So toxicity is different from difficult. So it's very important that, we must put that into context and just help us understand that we are not asking you to manage a toxic environment. It's very obvious that, nothing is going to change, or there really is no way you can change things around. But then we are saying, if it's an environment that your boss is just asked to satisfy, somebody who may be asked as in to comprehend, this conversation would help you to be able to manage around that. So let's talk about the different types of bosses. I mentioned earlier the abusive boss. Now the abusive boss sometimes, depending on how much you also understand the person, the abusive boss could be that kind of person that just needs an outlet to vent. Now, the outlet to vent really does not mean that you should put yourself in the position where you would be the person's outlet to always vent. Now, the absent boss is the kind of boss that is never around. You are a entry level professional and you have 2 years experience. You're a mid-level manager that has maybe 5 to 7 years experience, and at that level of your career you want somebody who will be able to provide feedback to you, and you have a boss who is really difficult just getting this person to be able to provide feedback. How then would you be able to walk around getting feedback, improving on your output, and just getting better with your job? So the absent boss sometimes is that person that is just rarely ever around to provide any sort of feedback. The person who would always tell you, oh, go and undo this yourself, without taking you through the proper channels to be able to do that. Then the micromanager is that person that is always on your neck. Now the thing about the micromanager is, there are times when a micromanager may be very useful in the work relationship, but there's a level where a micromanager would not be useful at all to an employee's growth. And for a micromanager, sometimes, they want to look at everything you are doing, they want to check everything. And so it's difficult for you to be able to use initiative and grow. And so it's very difficult for you to be able to say, oh, I think this is the way we should do this thing, and also contribute to your own quota. A micromanager is that person, that will tell you, oh, this is how I want things done, and it must be like that. And we have the procrastinator, that particular boss that will just always say, oh, okay, this report, we will do it in a week's time, even if the person knows that that report is very important, for your own outputs. Or maybe that your boss needs to look at a particular report for you to be able to send to another unit, but the person just never looks over it. The person is always procrastinating, and at the end of the day your outputs will become delayed. Now, let's begin also. Let's take a look at this thought that says a truly great boss is hard to find, difficult to part with, and impossible to forget. I'm sure that if we were to take a survey of people who have worked with really good bosses, you would most likely say that you and your boss still have a very wonderful relationship. You still keep in touch. This is somebody that when you think about your career in terms of your growth, you look back and you feel as if, oh, this person, the kind of work that we did together, I really enjoyed it. But for whatever reason, maybe for the purpose of growth or advancement, you just had to move on at that time. So let's discuss our strategies for managing a difficult or for managing difficult bosses. Now, one of the things that I always say is, if you feel as if your boss is difficult, there are so many things that you can do. So many things. And I'm going to start with an example. I was talking to a fellow HR professional about 2 months ago about his experience in a particular workplace. And I had also had the same conversation with about four other people who were in that same organization and that same unit. And their feedback towards their boss was, oh, you know, this person is not a very easy person to work with. It's not very easy to work with. It's kind of like difficult. And on speaking with this, my colleague, he says, oh, no, I had the best of time. I never had any issues working with this person, It was all smooth sailing. There were times when I had ideas and then I run it by him, we talk about it, and then we move on from there. And I had that kind of like gave me a pause because I thought about it. What was the difference in their experience? Was it a matter of perspective? Was it a matter of competence? Or was it a matter of truly this person was a difficult person? And that is going to form the crux of our conversation in talking about the strategies for managing difficult bosses. Now, the truth to understand is managing a difficult boss may be a challenge, but it is very doable. If you feel that you're being criticized unfairly by your boss, what do you think would be the best way to confront the boss with your concerns? Would you want to discuss your concerns, or would you want to confront your boss? There's a difference. And because of the cultural perspective also that we have to things from this part of the world, largely many people want to deal with things with just speaking about it and not in a confrontational manner. However, there are times when the frustration has gotten to the peak and you just have an outburst. But then the essence of this conversation is just to help us as professionals, just manage these things and be deliberate about thinking of strategies for the different type of bosses you have. If your boss is a micromanager, for instance, how would you come up with a strategy to manage a micromanager? If your boss is a procrastinator, would you want to maybe if a project output is supposed to be for a timeline of 2 weeks, would you want to have worked on it before then, so that within the 2 weeks that the project is supposed to run, your boss would provide feedback to you. So these are all measures and strategies that we can come up with. Now, like a marriage, I said that you should try to handle your complaints in a manner that does not do further damage to the relationship. And one thing that we must always keep at the back of our minds is, that saying that you're supposed to make your boss shine. The saying is also true because at the end of the day, your boss has, a lot of say in how your growth happens, in how your experience is. So it's very critical that you learn how to manage this. Now, be tactful about your feedback. You don't want to talk to your boss and tell your boss that actually we did not send out the reports because you delayed. That kind of feedback is not tactful. you know in instances like that, coming up with maybe examples on how we can do better. Oh, this particular report was supposed to have gone out, but maybe for next time we can work on the timeline. In that instance, you have not mentioned anybody who is at fault, but you have also been able to delve to into the matter, which is that we had a delay in submitting. Your boss definitely will go back and think about it and understand that, oh, this delay actually came from me, but it was not for you to point out. Now, be self-aware. This is one critical thing that I would like us to talk about in the course of this conversation. Self-awareness is very, very important for any level of professional, entry level, mid level, senior. In fact, as you go on in your career, your self awareness, there needs to be realignment in how self aware you are. Now, self awareness is that ability for you to understand yourself, understand your environment, and also understand people. It's it helps us to be able to understand people's motives, their behavior. So your boss comes into the office in the morning, and you know that this person normally comes into the office and is always frowning, and there's a particular report that maybe you need to share with your boss, and you always want to share it first thing in the morning when your boss comes in, when you already know that the person carries a gloomy face? Why not understand that, oh, this is his behavior? It comes into the office in the morning, because you never can tell what the person is going through as well. That's the truth. Maybe your boss is having some issues, personal issues, that is kind of like influencing, his attitude in the workplace. So self-awareness is that your own ability to be able to gauge the mood of your boss, the mood in the office per time, and then use that to be able to achieve results. Now, social awareness is your ability to, accurately pick up on the emotions in others. And there are two things that self awareness will do for you. It will help to increase your social awareness and relationship management. That ability to be able to manage relationships, your emotions, the emotions of other people, just to be able to get the best out of a situation. And I'm going to use an example. One very top leader in the HR space in Nigeria, he he put a post months ago about how he was in an organization and an employee was having great difficulty with her boss. And she came to him and talked to him about, is there any way you can speak with this person? And then he said, oh, okay, that's noted. Now, I think it was after 2 weeks, this person just comes to say, wow, I've noticed a clear change in this person's attitude. There's been a change and I'm really enjoying the change at this time. However, he never had a conversation with our boss. But then that's to tell you that attitude adjustment sometimes can actually help in how we manage our bosses. So there was an attitude adjustment on her end. Maybe she started to see things from a different perspective, because she thought, oh, this person that I had spoken to, who is, in the executive team, would have spoken to this person. And so she changed the attitude with the expectation that that conversation had taken place, and everything just fell into place. So there's a need for us also to gauge our environment, because that is what would help us, in managing the people that that we report to. That is what will help us to be able to manage the relationship. Now, understand your own competence and whether you are delivering. This is very key. If you say your boss is difficult, why is your boss difficult? And the truth is, there are some bosses who are A-type personalities. If you work with an A-type personality, you would agree with me that every I must be dotted and every T must be crossed, because their personality type, they pay very strict attention to details. They want to see that things are, at par with the way they are supposed to be done. So if it is outside their normal way of doing things, the likelihood of them saying no, this is not right, and lashing out is very high. However, the responsibility of how they now manage it would tend to speak as to whether that person is a difficult person. Of course, we have some A-type personality bosses also who have learned over time how to manage their own emotions. But then you really now need to go back to say, why does my boss always complain about this thing? It could be that you're not delivering the way you're supposed to deliver. And why I say that this conversation is centered around management is because at the end of the day, it will also strengthen your own competence if you can learn how to manage properly. Now, understand the reasons for your boss's difficult behavior as well. That's very critical. Your boss may be going through certain things and also having conversations. Of course, understanding the reason would warrant you having a conversation with your boss to say, sir or ma, is there a way that both of us can sit together to have a conversation? Now, when you have to have the conversation as well, you have to understand how and the when of such conversations. You don't want to have a conversation where, you can clearly see that your boss is not in the mood for such conversation. So you also need to be able to gauge the mood. Now, manage your own negative emotions regarding your boss's behavior, so that you don't create an environment where you are counter attacking your boss. I've seen this. I've heard stories of where professionals will go behind their boss's back. You don't want to do that. So manage your own negative emotions. You know, you can put in perspective, yes, this person in this area, is difficult to manage in this area. However, what is that one thing that you can speak about that tells you that your boss is displaying a positive behavior? Maybe this particular boss is very difficult in terms of your work output. But maybe, just maybe, this particular boss is the kind of person that when he comes in, asks after your family. How is your family? How are your children? That could be a way for you to be able to, manage the counter emotion, understand and manage your own negative reactions. So you may need to work on communicating what the issues are in a very positive manner, so that you can create an environment or an atmosphere for problem or for resolution about how to do better, not as a personal attack. So don't see it as your person. Um, so somebody once said that feedback is feedback. Feedback is not who you are. It does not connote that this perception that this person has about you is all there is about you. So you need also to be able to go back to look at whatever criticism that the person has, provided regarding whatever. Go back, um, be subjective about the criticism, be objective rather about the criticism, and do not see it as a personal attack. Ask yourself, because this is one thing that I have practiced a lot. I ask myself when somebody is providing feedback to me on something, and I look at it and I'm like, what could I have done better? If I have not put in my best work, I tell myself, oh, I could have done better also in this instance. And it's also very important to note that you're not responsible for how another person sees you or how they communicate the way they see you. You need to separate your emotions from how the other person sees you. You need to separate your emotions. So if your boss says that, oh, you don't know how to do good work, are you just going to go back and feel, oh, this person has said I don't know how to do good work? Or are you going to take it upon yourself to say that I'm giving myself a timeline in the next 2 months, or now I'm going to improve my outputs? Now, separate your personal ego from your business persona and your boss's trust. The most difficult of bosses also want to have that sense of they have people who they can trust. I don't think that any relationship can exist outside of trust, most especially a manager subordinate relationship. Nobody wants to have the feeling of, oh, this person, is going to go behind my back and undermine me. Which is why at the start of this conversation, I said we needed to separate a toxic boss from a difficult boss. Of course, if it's a toxic situation, the need to maybe, talk to a more senior business leader is there. The need to talk to maybe, more senior colleagues in the HR professional space, is necessary for you to be able to just, manage your own mental health. Now, adapt to your manager's working style. Does your manager require that you send in a report every Monday morning on what was done last week? Adapt to the style. Don't say that why would this person ask me to be sending a report on Monday mornings? Why do I have to send the report? But shift your perspective. What if sending a report also would make you a much more better report writer? So, and that is why I said understanding the perspective and shifting our perspective about how we manage our difficult bosses, and being more self-aware would help us to be able to navigate the relationship. Now, try how to control your impulses to react emotionally or defensively. There's no need for you to be defensive or to react emotionally. Try to see this criticism as an opportunity to work together with your boss on a developmental plan as well. See yourself as a partner with your boss on this plan rather than on seeing yourself as a victim of a power struggle. Saying you are there to make your boss shine, it holds true every time. Any day, anytime, you're there to make your boss shine. So you must always put yourself in that situation where your boss understands that you're a partner with he or she. You're not in a power struggle at all. So I also said you should set clear boundaries as well. Setting clear boundaries would be that I have done that in so I once worked with a boss who, okay, so let me just share this very quickly. I once worked in an environment where I had a boss who shared everything with me, our financials, when we had projects, my boss would tell me, oh, this is the amount that we're expecting. She would even ask my opinion on what we should, actually maybe quotes. And then I moved on from there, and I had a boss who was not willing to share anything. So it was an attitude adjustment for me because I had to adjust to coming from an environment where everything I had all the information, and then getting to an environment where the information was mostly eating away from me, and even to make decisions was difficult because I did not have the full information. So setting clear boundaries also could mean, oh, these are the things that I am not willing to do. However, in setting clear boundaries as well, you must have at the back of your mind that your competence must not be called into question. Because once your competence is called into question, it will be very, very easy for the boundary lines to be blurred. Now, you must learn how to manage upward. So maybe in understanding the strategies also for managing your own boss, is also helping you how to manage people who are, who you're going to be managing later in the future. Now, prove that you're a person of value by doing your best work. Document your interactions with your boss. I'm pretty sure that for some of us, we may have had experiences where, maybe you had a procrastinator as a boss, and the person just never sends in reports. And a particular department asks you, oh, what's this report that you were supposed to have gotten from you? And your boss comes back to you to say that, I thought you were supposed to send this in. But because you did not document, you did not send any gentle or kind reminder to your boss to say, sir, this is a reminder that, you've not given your own feedback regarding this report. So your boss can actually hold you to that. So learn how to document your interactions. Anticipate the expectations of your boss. Working with somebody for 6 months, you should be able to anticipate. I'm sure that, pretty much all of us, we've heard the term HR business partner. Learn how to be a business partner with your boss. And in so doing, you should learn how to anticipate the expectations of your boss. Now, take responsibility when necessary. When you've goofed, accept it and move on. Become visible and take on new responsibilities. Now, becoming visible could be your long-term plan to, maybe you feel as if there's no prospect in this place. And I would like to maybe move to another department. Maybe you are in HR and you're in the payroll unit. But then in the next 6 to 1 year, you would like to move to learning and development. Why not take on some learning, volunteer on the learning and development units? Tell them, oh, I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to send emails regarding this training, org wide. I'm willing to, just step in and assist. That way, they'll begin to see your value. So become the someone who is visible and take on new responsibilities. And very critical, understand your boss's communication style. Now, the impact of navigating a difficult work terrain and managing a difficult boss on you as an employee. At the end of the day, what do you gain from having successfully managed such work terrain and such bosses? Your emotional intelligence is improved. So you've put yourself in that position where you can manage other people very well. So if you're called upon to be a leader, it won't be difficult for you to manage upward and manage downward. Now you learn how to manage up for the future, increase productivity, because just like I said, putting things into perspective would mean that you're focusing on your work outputs per time, and you're particular about, going back to what you're doing, going back to your work, and looking at those areas that needs improvement and improving on those areas. Now, increased advancement potential. So the potential for you to, advance is there because you've learned over time how to manage in that terrain. Improves your leadership and communication skills. Wrapping up so that we can take questions. Improves your social competence, that's your self-awareness and relationship management skills. Now, I talked about navigating through a difficult workplace. I kind of like separated it that you must maintain your professionalism. You don't want to be caught as that person that does not know how to manage their emotions. We see people in the workplace who, at the slightest, offense, they have an outburst. Listen before reacting. Be polite and professional with your boss and colleagues, and avoid gossip. We talked about trust. When in learning how to manage your boss, there must be that element of trust. Your boss must be able to trust you. Now, confront problems tactfully in the workplace and gently. And assessing your relationship realistically would mean, can I manage this person's difficulty, or is it bordering on being toxic? You have to assess that relationship. And you also need to assess where you're coming from. Now, the truth is, um, some people permit my use of this language. Some people are more strict than others. Some people have a background of having managed, different expectations and different kinds of people. But then some people, things like words may be a trigger for some other persons. So it may be difficult for that kind of person to stay in an environment where, there is a repeated cycle of using abusive language. So you also need to assess the kind of relationship that you're in the workplace and with your boss. Now, don't forget to document your accomplishments. I learned this a while back. Always document your accomplishments. This is what I've done, so that even for performance appraisals, when you and your boss sit down together and your boss is like, you've not done this and you've not done that, documenting your accomplishments would help you to be able to highlight the things that you have done. Always be willing to accept criticism, and then maintain a strong network. Very important and very critical. Now, let's discuss. So that is the end of my presentation, because I told Mr. Deoshun that I would want us to have some time for discussions. So I would need to move out of my full screen so I would see.
You can stop
Yeah.
sharing.
So can we have, at this time, can we have the questions? I think Mr. Adeosun is going to be facilitating that part. So I wouldn't know if.
Please go ahead. I had a conversation on something with you earlier. Please go ahead.
Oh,
You can
okay. All right.
help people
Okay.
note and so on. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just I want to take a look at the chat box to see if anybody has dropped any
So,
questions.
Chuku, your hands are up. You can go on with your contributions.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Damilola, for this wonderful expository. Can you hear me?
You're welcome. Yes, please. Yes, please. I can.
Okay, good. So, I noticed you've done marvelously well on this presentation, and I think you touched on every angle. Just as an addition, I think I am experiencing, or I experienced something like that before, and I realized the major problem in seeing your boss as a difficult boss is actually your perception as a person, which is boxed up, is most especially in your negative emotion towards that person. I've had that experience, and I realized when I really had the time to talk to a senior colleague, and he walked me through a process, and I realized my problem was what I thought about this person instead of allowing myself to learn how this person wants to work. And I get boxed up in my emotions, and I begin to tag him as difficult. Sometimes they may not really be difficult. They just have a different working method like you do. And because you do not understand how they want to work, so you tend to assume that they are difficult. But if you can put your emotions aside and really reason through the situation, you will realize that everybody is actually nice. Even a madman has friends. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Tochukwu, for that very wonderful contribution that you have made. So I'm going to take a question from Margaret now. Margaret says, how do you handle a difficult boss who wants to do all the talking at every discussion and thinks he knows what he wants to say, so no need for you to say anything? Yeah. Don't forget that we mentioned something about letting your boss shine. But for me, I think one of the ways that you can manage somebody who just always wants to be at the spotlight is to reorient yourself and tell yourself that your time to shine in the spotlight will come. That's the truth. And it is time for your boss to shine. What you can do is, as you help your boss, as you partner with your boss, towards some of these conversations, maybe you need to make a presentation to the general team. You're also learning in that process. So if your boss is not the kind of person that wants you to share the spotlight, it's okay. Move up from there, reorient yourself, and just gain perspective that your time would also come to shine. I hope that answers your question, Margaret. Rita has a question. Rita, please go ahead.
Madam Rita, you can go ahead with your questions or contributions. Hello, Madam Babalola. Okay, while we are waiting for her, let's go to iPhone. iPhone, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Can iPhone please go ahead?
Okay, you can go back to the chat box. I will lower their hands so that it won't be pinning them.
Okay, so I have another question here. Somebody is saying, how do you manage a boss who always comes with an attack approach to resolving issues, especially at meetings? Okay, so you would want to see this as an opportunity to show the boss how things should be done. Now, the truth is, the fact that you have a boss and you're a subordinate, I really don't like to use the word subordinate. The fact that you have somebody who is managing you does not mean that in certain areas you are not, ahead of the curve beyond what that person knows. So you may have a boss who does not know how to manage their own emotions. At that time, what do you do? Do you also lash out at somebody who always comes with an attack approach? Now, let me give you an example. A friend of mine once had a boss who would always say, "You've not done this, you've not done that. Why haven't you done this particular thing?" And my friend was talking to me about it. And I told him that one of the best things that you can do is to always tell your boss in a very tactful and easy manner, "Okay, I've not done this particular thing. Can you please give me an example and put into context so I can learn?" Now, in doing that, you're putting the onus on your boss to be able to come up with an example of a particular situation where you have not done what you're supposed to do. So if your boss is the kind of person that is always on, attacking, that is always attacking you on maybe things that ought to have been done, things that you have not done, it lies on you to be able to be the mature one, because we've been talking about self-awareness and emotional intelligence. So be intelligent enough to be able to say, "Oh, thank you very much for this feedback, but I would like you to, just help to put into context so that I can do better." The truth of the matter is, I've come to realize that with difficult people, if you understand how to manage their own emotions and your own, you will get the best out of them.
Maybe we quickly
you can go ahead.
Madam Rita now.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. And Damilola, thank you for doing justice to this particular. I want to share two personal encounters that I've had with difficult bosses. And earlier on in my career, I worked with fantastic bosses, but then fantastic in quotes. So particular incident, we had a transaction that went bad, and I was the head of the unit, even though I couldn't give out facility without the approval of the authorized signatories as per group head, divisional head, and things. But when the loan went back, my boss took it personal. It affected me, it affected him. But then I didn't expect his reaction, and he made the workplace where, when people get so personal, you are no longer addressing the issue, and you begin to address personality. You begin to abuse the privilege of being a boss. You said earlier that you don't slug it out with your bosses, really, and that's one thing I learned. So during meetings, he kept on picking on me. I write what he says or what he said then at the meeting. I'll write them down. So, of course, when we finished the meeting, my colleagues will come in, everybody will empathize, but nobody was taking action. you know, where everybody knows this person is difficult. This person is really, really difficult, because even in the social media pages, maybe if it was like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, it would be something that I could take up, or I mean, institute a legal action against it. But then this was way back in maybe 2011, 2012. Okay, so it got so bad that apparently some people were already taking it above me to send text messages to executive director, but nobody wanted to come out. But it got to a point, you know, when somebody is slugging it out, you can't say anything because they are hierarchy. But then it got to the end that I had to go above my boss. I had to go and report because it was getting personal. So when I got to my boss, that's the executive director, and she was like, oh, she was waiting for whoever the people were referring to her, because it went back as text messages. And then when I went there, I didn't think I would have the authority or the courage to do that, because sometimes when your boss is becoming personal, sometimes you think you can handle it. No, you need somebody more in senior authority to handle it for you, no matter what it is, because now you brought the whole issue to the front burner. He or she cannot attack you again. There's nothing that person can do. So I had to step up to my ED, explain it. And honestly, I didn't believe my ED was going to call the person. So we were like two on a table that day. And then Rita, okay, I want to hear you out. This person is here and this. So for me, I think we have to know when to cut it. It's not everybody that can stomach it. That's the truth. You need to know and look at all the options. The option is don't disrespect the person, don't abuse the person, don't talk. So personal, how to manage your emotion is key. So no matter the outburst, keep your cool. Because when we got to HR, did you do this? Did you do that? I said no, and everybody could attest. I couldn't even react negatively. So that's number one. Then number two, another encounter I had with another boss that was caustic. You know, when people call you plastic, I've never heard the word plastic. This is a negative work environment where abusive language was being allowed. So it got to the point we had to go and tell the HR manager. And because this person is also senior in ranking to the HR manager, there was nothing the person could do. But then, you know, when you speak up, this person speak up, this person speak up, there's no way they're going to say you're all lying against this particular boss. So I think people need to speak up, be respectful, know when to pick your battles. And when it's getting to the point you can't go to work, then you know you can't do it alone. You need to rise up and be courageous enough to move to the next person or the person that you think your boss respects. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So the key things I'm going to take from Rita's contribution is once you get to that point, and I know that in the course of the conversation we had mentioned, understand when you are dealing with somebody who is difficult and somebody who is bordering on being toxic. It's very, very critical that we are able to make this distinction. So you don't stay in an environment where, you know, your BP has been normal for years and you're in your 30s and suddenly you develop high blood pressure, you know, and things now start to trigger, you know, you and you are maybe having health issues. So we must understand when it is difficult and when it is toxic. So I have another question here. Okay, Juliana, please go ahead with your questions before we take the questions in the chat box.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
okay, please. So how do you manage a boss who micromanages? Okay, I just had a new boss. She just came in less than a month ago. And every time she assigns tasks, she micromanages every bit of it. For instance, let's say you're typing a memo and she's looking, are you using ease? And this is what you've been doing. I mean, nobody is immune to corrections, right? But every second she's picking, are you okay? So how do you manage that? Because it can get to a point where you can't even control it. You can't even focus on doing the work. So how do you manage such? Thank you.
Okay, so did you just say, thank you very much for your question, Juliana. Did you say that just got into a new job, or this person just became
the person just became my boss. My former boss, she's leaving, she just left, so she came on board and took over from her.
Okay,
so we are still trying to get to know her, but she tries to manage every bit.
Okay, so I would say that you need to be patient enough to build a relationship of trust. You know, we mentioned earlier that people have their own different perspective as to how they do things. Some people are coming from an environment where micromanaging has been the only way that they've been able to get work done. But as you move along in your relationship with her, as she begins to see and understand your competence, it helps micromanagers, you know, take a step back to say, oh, this person actually is able to handle this. So I think it's for you to be patient enough to, you know, over time build a system where she trusts you enough to be able to handle, you know, your own work and manage your work. So just give it some time, give the relationship some time, and then see how you also prove your competence to her. You know, take up even new things, make suggestions to her, suggestions that if at the end of the day she goes with it without acknowledging you, she knows that, oh, this was the person that actually made this suggestion. So just be patient enough to build the relationship with trust.
All right. I mean, hello,
So I
can you
don't
hear me?
see
Just
any
to check.
other. And
Hello.
yes, please.
Okay, I was trying to say, like, okay, this is a
Hello.
culture where, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please. I can
Go
hear
ahead.
you.
Okay, so I was trying to say that she doesn't,
Yes,
okay, this is
please.
there's a certain culture of the organization, right? Sometimes you see, sometimes it's not like you're trying to make your boss fail, but she doesn't even try to listen because she just came on board, do you get? And sometimes, you know, this is not how it's been done based on the culture of the organization. But you can't even say, oh, because she's not even ready to learn. And so most times, like, we have a team already, a HR team, and you're not, she's not even trying to take your own idea on based on what, it's not like you're not trying to accept the change that she's trying to bring, but this is not what the culture of the organization states. We are trying to say this, but they're not, she's not taking it. So most times, is it wise to just keep quiet so she falls? Because you can see that outrightly she's doing it, she's not following the trend of how it works in the organization based on the culture. So do you keep quiet and allow her fail? Because she's not ready to take your
Oh
advice.
no,
Just leave it.
no. Keeping quiet and allowing her to fail would not would be on against will be against you as a professional. The best you can do is to assess the environment, understand when is the best time for you to approach her and have conversations around this. Provide your own feedback to her professionally and in a very tactful manner. Make her realize that, oh, over time in the organization, these are the successes that we have recorded because we have, you know, followed this particular system or way of doing things. You are providing feedback to her at that time. You're doing your own duty as a professional, and then you have to leave it to her to make a decision. That's the best you can do. But don't forget that we talked about you don't want to present any situation that makes it look as if you are undermining your boss. But at the end of the day, you need to strike a balance between acting as a professional and you know, providing feedback when you're supposed to provide and taking a step back when you know that doing anything outside of that is going to undermine your boss. Az, I'm just going to go with the first part of your name, please. And I hope that answers your question. Eze, please, you can go ahead with your own question. While after Eze, please, we are going to take the questions in the chat box because I see a couple. Eze, please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Please confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
I want to appreciate you. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the knowledge you've impacted. You know, I had to join this this platform so fast, or the meeting so fast, because I am presently in this kind of situation where I have a boss who micromanage to the list of everything. In fact, I want to give a very typical example. Even if I want to go and ease myself, I need to take a permission.
Wow.
You can just imagine how it feels like. Excuse me, ma, I want to go ease myself. Like, it's so embarrassing. But that is not my issue. That is not my issue. Now, I'm not being boastful. She does not really.
Okay.
She has been in the system in this particular organization for say 15 years, and she wasn't in HR. She was moved into HR, and she does not have the core competencies in HR. So now, seeing a younger person who came into the system, she feels threatened. Obviously, she feels threatened, and the inferiority complex is there.
she's threatened by your presence,
Mm-hmm.
trying to tell her this is not it, trying to correct her. And I'm actually not comfortable. Like a few persons know, especially in the platform, they know I've already said, okay, I'm done. I don't want to work here again. I'm being micromanaged. I'm tired. In fact, I am disengaged to the point that I don't even, once it's a minute late of my work time, I just want to leave the organization. Straight up, I want to go because I've been micromanaged. How do I, for God's sake, manage this situation? Because I'm tired,
Okay, so
honestly.
okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Izzy. So why I like your contribution and your question is because you've been able to identify as well, the issues. You've been able to identify that this could be an issue of somebody having inferiority complex, and here is subordinate who does very well in their work and shines. The truth is, for many of us in the course of our professional career, we would most likely come in contact with a boss that has inferiority complex in one area, and maybe you shine in that particular area. Don't forget that as we speak about you managing your emotions, we are open that these conversations also, bosses will be able to have these conversations amongst themselves. But I like the fact that you've pinpointed the issue, and you've identified that this is not an environment that I would want to stay in. And so at this point, you may need to start with your exit strategy. Do you have an exit strategy in place that would help you in the next 6 months? And your exit strategy would include, being on this type of HR mentorship groups, putting it out there to people who are within your circle to let them know that you're job hunting. Be very deliberate about your own personal and professional development in the interim. However, while you're waiting, provide value. That's one thing that I would always say. While you're still there, ensure that you keep on providing value. That is what is going to create a distinction at the end of the day. That would even make your boss feel, oh, this person was actually a very rare gem that, is exiting the organization. So have an exit plan. It's very important. Your exit plan. I like Tochuku's contribution. You could have one or two people that you vent to. Venting sometimes is also very critical. Somebody that you just talk to say that this is what I'm going through, and the person just says, "Oh, okay. How do we help?" The person checks in with you. So while you have the exit plan, this could also become the strategies to be able to manage the situation while you're there. And then when you ultimately are able to exit, you also carry the lessons along with you. So somebody says, you're welcome. That how do you manage a supervisor that pushes you out to the old group when there's a mistake in your work? Yes. Now, many of us have seen this a lot. The boss that does not want to take responsibility for any mistake. I have been fortunate to have such a boss, and this particular person will just push you out. That's the truth to every other person in the organization. That will make it clear that I wasn't the one that made this mistake. So, how do you manage this type of person? It's a two-way thing. Do you want to be quiet about it? Because it could be how that person knows how to manage people. Or do you want to identify another leader who is at the same level with that person and maybe anonymously provide that feedback to that person to say, I think you may need to talk to this person. You may identify one person that is that you talk to this person about this particular traits, that would be my suggestion in that case. And if it becomes repeated, it's also a situation of you telling yourself, this mistake that I'm making, how do I improve on it? Don't forget that we talked about competence. I've seen people who are really smart who have been able to navigate dealing with a difficult boss because they ensure that they do not get caught up in any way on their job, that they do not get caught in a mistake in the course of their work. So you might also need to go back and ask yourself if there's a need for a self-development in this area. for you to just ensure that the mistakes do not repeat themselves. Sometimes it could be maybe your attention to details needs to be improved, and your boss keeps calling out the S that you added to something that's, an S is not supposed to be there. So you have to just go back and tell yourself, how do you improve? The funny thing is, I've also seen difficult bosses who actually shower accolades sometimes on an employee that maybe such situations has happened with, and then the person just says, you've improved though. Wow, really? I've seen your improvements in this area. It's because that person has put things in perspective, has gone back and focused on what they're supposed to focus on. Somebody says, how do you manage a toxic work environment? So I'm pretty sure that this person joined in late. I'm very sure. Because we have talked about it, just putting in perspective what you're dealing with. Is it a difficult work terrain or a toxic work terrain? If it is a toxic work terrain, it's just, I'd like to use an example of marriage, for instance. Let's use that example. While in this part of our world, you should anything, but if a woman has a spouse who is difficult, who comes and says, you've made pounded yam for me. I don't want to eat pounded yam. I want to eat amala this night. That's difficult. But if you have a toxic spouse who emotionally abuses you, physically abuses you, now you need to understand the difference. And the difference is that one is definitely going to affect your mental health, is definitely going to affect the way you see yourself, and maybe at that time you may need to make certain decisions as to moving yourself from that environment. Others, there are some people that their capacity to handle things is really high. However, we must first of all understand ourselves, which is where the self-awareness comes in, to be able to perceive if this environment is one that I can stay in, or this environment is one where I cannot stay in. And different things are important to different people. Like Eze said, Eze wants an environment where he feels as if he's growing and is not being micromanaged. That is critical to you as a person. So you may need to understand what is critical to you, the things that you can overlook, and just see how you can balance things. Yeah, so we have 5 new messages. So somebody says, I anticipate having an outburst on Monday with my boss. I've had too much and I don't think I can take it. His words are final. He doesn't care about anybody's thoughts. He uses the word am, not a nice person. Okay. So if you say that you're going to have an outburst on Monday with your boss, I don't think there's any way that this outburst is going to help the outcome of the situation, which should be your focus. The focus should be on, I want a good outcome. And if you're going to go about the conversation with a negative mindset, the outcome would most likely not be positive. So, what I would advise is just ensure that you have the right time and it's the right environment for you to speak with your boss. You will be shocked sometimes that the angle to which you approach a particular issue with your boss would disarm them, and would just ensure that they listen to you. So I would advise approach it with much tact and diplomacy. That you want to have a conversation on how work can be better between both of you, and then also let him know that there are certain things that are a trigger for you as a person, and just have the conversation, but have it in a tactful manner. Somebody keeps saying manage your emotions until you have gotten another job. Okay, I can say a question here that says, how do you handle a toxic workplace where someone in a senior position is responsible for poisoning the minds of staff members against HR or management? Unfortunately, you can't take any actions against this person because you don't have solid proof. Now, since there's an absence of proof, and since this conversation is just what you have heard, that this person poisons the minds of staff members against HR and management, you also need to ask yourself, this maybe belittling or poisoning, so to say, what is the effect and impact on you as a person? on the work that you do. If you assess that it doesn't really have any negative impact, why not focus on the work you do? Focus on your own output. Don't forget that we said something about always documenting and having reports. When you document and you send to the appropriate quarters, you send to the MD, whoever the reporting line is, you send to them. It kind of like counters whatsoever poisoning, because you as a professional, you are being data driven, you are being reports driven. So if it does not particularly affect the outcome of what you do, if the poisoning is just mere talk, what you have heard that this person says, why not focus on the things that are important? And in that way also, you're showing the person that you're not one to sit around, just talking and going about poisoning people's minds or trying to get out what this person is saying, how this person is saying this. You're focused on the important things, which is your job, getting the right output and moving the organization along. So this person says, my boss travels a lot, but I sometimes have documents for him to sign, but his PA says bulky ones cannot be scanned to him. Afterwards, when he returns, my boss claims the documents were delayed. This is very simple. Sir, I've noticed in the past 3 months, we've had delays in, processing certain documents because of your absence. Can you please advise on the method for us to go about this that ensures that documents are signed in due time and that ensures that the process is handled? That's a very simple conversation that you can have with your boss. You're putting the focus on the process and how he can advise on the best way for you to go about the process. Somebody says, what would be your advice to someone who experiences both a toxic and a difficult workplace and boss? Please, I would like to say that if your workplace is ever like this, kindly find a way of create an exit plan as soon as you can, please. If you are working with a boss that is difficult, your workplace is also difficult, because sometimes the balance comes when you may have a difficult boss, but the workplace is generally friendly. So that is where you draw strength from. But if the workplace is unfriendly, is difficult and toxic, and then you also have a boss who is doing the same thing, for your mental health, my advice would be have an exit plan and exit as soon as you can. Okay, so I see that there are no more questions at this time. But as I mentioned earlier, okay, somebody just dropped another question. Let me just read through. Someone said, how do you cope while working on the exit plan? And the exit plan is yet to come to pass. Okay, so my coping mechanism would be have people that you can talk to. I've realized that when you have more senior professionals, people who are within the space that you work in, that you can speak with regarding your experience, it also helps you. I like to say that I see that as it's therapeutic. Yes, so it's like you're having therapy. You're talking to somebody, you're telling the person, oh, this is what I'm going through. The person is also sharing with you. A more senior professional is able to share with you different perspectives, is able to share with you, on a case by case basis what you can do and how it can be better. So what I would advise is, while you're still there, have people that you can talk to. Sometimes these people are just there for you to vent to say, you can imagine what my boss did today. This is, and then the person is able to help you gain perspective on how you can continue in that kind of environment. Somebody said, I have a micromanager, a drama queen, and on the minor is always about the person, the energy, he refuses to learn. This person is actually a toxic boss. And we've repeatedly talked about how to make that distinction. Is very important. Once you make that distinction, you're able to realize, this, I don't think this is a place I can work. I think it may be a good time for me to just move. And I would always like to say, I've seen instances of people who their exit plan is 3 months or 6 months, but while in the process of exiting, they look for other things. For some of us here, you know, our main jobs are not the only things that we do. Some of us have side jobs, you know, some of us have little businesses. So is there a way you can also focus on the little business as, you know, your exit plan is in place? Maybe the plan would be for you to be able to shore up money so that if at all you need to make a drastic decision to say, I need to exit, you have something to fall back on. Somebody says a chronic complainer, just ignore. I think complainers are okay. So I would also like to say that we all have different perspective. If I deal with a complainer is somebody that I can just tune out. That is my own personality. It's very easy for me to just to tune out somebody who complains. I just tune you out, because if the feedback you're giving me is not constructive, then it's actually you complaining, because I can't pick anything from what you've said or you're saying that would help me to be better. How do you manage a boss who doesn't mind roping you into a situation just to save your head? Well, I think we've gone through this. There are many bosses that would want to save their head and just throw their subordinates under the boss. If you have, as a such a boss, it is left for you to ensure that you do the needful. That is why I referenced documenting. Always document. In fact, when your boss knows that um, you are the kind of person that always documents, you are the kind of person that, you know, you always have information at your fingertips, it reduces how the impulse to want to throw you under the bus, because the person knows that you have evidence to back up what you have done per time. So always document so that you don't find yourself in a situation where your boss is going to throw you under the bus. So Emanuela, I think Emanuela would be the last question, because it's already shooting to about 8:30. So Emanuela, please go ahead with your question so that we can take your question and then wrap it up with any other contribution and call it a day.
Okay, thank you very much, Damilola. Good evening. My question is this: I was actually typing it out when you called up my name. So a situation where you have a boss that is probably slimy, like you cannot really understand him, and he tells you he would do something, and by the time you get up there, you see that he's doing something quite different from what he actually discussed with you. How do you actually handle such person?
Okay, so I would.
Then sometimes he throws tantrums, and sometimes again he throws some tantrums just in front of other colleagues. I don't know if it's to spite the person. So for such kind of boss, what do you think?
Okay, so in such situations, I would still like to reference the one of my previous responses. Is there somebody in a, you know, much more senior leadership role? We talked about, you know, gaining visibility, and in as part of gaining visibility is you as a professional, you must also be able to identify people who are in the organization who are the major decision makers. You know, identify such people, see how you can get the best out of the relationship with such people, and most likely using such people to act as corrective mechanisms for such bosses. So you can do this anonymously if you feel that, oh, my relationship with this person has not gotten to the extent where I can just walk up to him to say, sir, this is what, you know, my boss is doing that I don't think is right. I mentioned a particular case of a senior professional in the space who talked about a lady who approached him and said, this is what my boss is doing, please speak with her. So if you identify such people who over time, you know, you've been able to win and buy over, you know, maybe in the way you approach them, in the way you want to take up more assignments, maybe from their own unit, and they see you as somebody that they can rely on. You know, it's all just relationship management. So if you're able to speak with people like that regarding your boss's behavior, or if HR sits at the table, because that's also a critical question. It's when HR professionals also do not have the they are not at that level, so to say, where they can speak with bosses who are doing the wrong thing, because they don't have the credibility at the level that they have to be able to make such corrections. But if you're lucky enough and in your organization, HR sits at the table, it will be easy for you to say, this is what I have noticed, and I think it would be better if this behavior can be corrected. And if your HR professional is a professional HR person, the person will take it up, because that is what HR people are there to do. So I think is the best way would be to go about it in that way, because you also you have to be careful about presenting yourself as a person who maybe wants to go behind your boss's back. You don't want to present yourself in that manner at all. So you're doing everything you can to balance the relationship and also ensure that you can get the kind of results that you want. Okay, so Cecilia says, what do you do when you know excess workload are deliberately piled on you? My boss said he would actually do so. So you have a boss that maybe his strategy to make you exit the organization is for him to overwork you. What do you do in such a situation? You have to have a deliberate conversation. I think many a times we may have this mindset that managing your boss means not speaking up, but there are instances where you actually do need to speak up and let your boss know that the workload I'm managing at this time, I'm really struggling with it. Is there a way, that you can help me to manage this workload better so that I'll be able to produce the kind of outputs that you expect? So I think it's critical that you have that conversation with your boss, so that if your boss had said so, it's also critical to understand, where did your boss have this conversation? Was it face to face with you, or was it mere essay? So if the latter is the case, sit your boss down and say, sir, I'm having serious concerns about my workload. It's not helping me to produce the kind of output that I want. Is there a way that we can both manage this? I think that would be a good way. So she says, he won't give, okay, that he will not give you a staff to be able to, for you to be able to manage the workload. So in this instance, I think the strategy about, you just managing as much as you can per time, just manage as much as you can. And if there's anything that falls through that you've not been able to manage, I think it will be very important for you to also take the documentation as a very important thing. You may want to come up with a strategy as well, where you do maybe like a weekly report for your boss, so that your boss will be able to see an outline of what you have done. And anything that you are not able to do keeps being moved over. And if there is a need for your boss to maybe call you out on what you are not able to do, document the fact that you've also informed him that your workload is too much for one person to take on. Because you would also want to refer to all those things at the end of the day to say, these are the weekly reports I do. This is the email communication that I had sent to you, telling you after our face-to-face conversation that I've not been able to manage this increased workload. So document, share a report to him, so that he would not have the mindset of, what exactly are you doing? I'm not saying what you are doing. So your report outlines what you are doing per time. But then you also have a proof that states that these are the things that I've made you realize that I cannot take on all this workload. If you have workload that goes way beyond your job description, even if we know that, we have this regular saying that all other duties that may be assigned to you, but all other duties does not mean that somebody needs to be submersed into, doing a duty that is meant for two people. So document your conversation and then always share a report so he knows. And at the end of the day, do the best that you can. If there's a need to keep moving things, he would understand that it's because the workload is too much. So I think we can wrap up now. In the absence of further questions, I think we can.
Thank you so much, Madam Damilola Ilori. I hope you
Thank
can
you
see
to everyone.
clearly how effortlessly you can reach 90 minutes on this program.
Yes, I see that.
We could easily have done 2 hours, but I won't let us do it. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yes, I
please
see.
let us appreciate our facilitator for tonight. She has been extremely brilliant in her presentation and also with respect to our response to all the questions we have thrown at her this evening. So I've unmuted everyone. If you want to say thank you and good night, let her feel the energy and warmth. Okay, she's our line manager tonight, and she has been extremely helpful and supportive. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much for your impactful section tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. And I hope that for everything that we have said, that everybody takes the learnings and, implements what we have said in the workplace. Yeah. So my name is Damilola Ilori on LinkedIn. So I'll be happy to connect with you all. And let me just drop my LinkedIn profile very quickly. Let me drop my LinkedIn profile.